These are 5 things I would never do as a nurse practitioner who works in functional medicine with a background in integrated cardiology. I'm going to give you the reasoning behind every one, and that way it can make sense, because this information is worthless if you don't know why. Number 1, I would never make a habit out of missing morning sunlight and sitting under a bright light all evening with nothing filtering it. I know how that sounds as the opening item from somebody with a background in cardiology. It sounds soft, but your circadian rhythm isn't just a wellness accessory. It's the foundation of health. It's the clock for the rest of your physiology. That internal clock is set by the morning sun. When light hits your eyes early, there's a whole cascade of timing decisions that follows. It's whenever your cortisol peaks, when your melatonin is built to release at night, bringing up your melanin levels, what shape your sleep takes once you are going to bed and laying your head on the pillow. Now we flip it. The bright, unfiltered light late in the evening tells the same system the opposite thing. The lights over your head or the phone in front of your face tells your brain that it's noon, pushes against melatonin. It shifts your cortisol timing later than it should be, and it changes the sleep architecture, which means it changes the composition of your sleep and not just the hours that you logged. You can be in bed for 8 hours and get a wildly different night depending on what your light exposure looked like for the 8 hours beforehand. Hormone signaling and metabolic signaling both sit downstream of that clock. So when somebody comes to me with a hormone complaint and their light exposure is inverted with a dark morning and a bright night, we're not starting from neutral. We're working against the clock before we do anything else. Sunlight's free. There's no prescription, no purchase. You get your light early in the morning and you cut it down late. And we need the right exposure at the right time. And almost nobody is doing it in modern life. Number 2, I don't use fragrance on myself and I don't use it in my home. Fragrance is a catch-all term and they can hide anything under that. And it's one of the most significant exposures for volatile organic compounds in the average household or on your person. Those compounds evaporate into the air at room temperature, so you're not encountering them once, you're breathing them in continuously in an enclosed space. The number of compounds used in fragrance behave as endocrine disruptors, which mean they can interfere with hormone signaling. Some of them also have a carcinogenic effect. Count the sources in one house: candles, plug-in air fresheners, laundry detergents, dryer sheets, fabric softener, cleaning products, body wash, lotion, deodorant, cologne. The thing hanging from your rearview mirror inside of a small sealed box that you sit inside of and drive to work. None of those register as health decisions. Nobody buys dryer sheets and thinks about their endocrine system. Here's the part that you should change how you look at. Your body doesn't experience those exposures one at a time. It carries the total. Little exposures every day add up over time with severe consequences. Total body burden. The question is not whether any single product is dangerous, it's what the sum of all these products together look like over years. In some people, that ongoing load appears to sensitize the nervous and immune systems over time. That is slower and quieter than an allergy. There's no moment where you react and connect it to a cause. You gradually become someone who does not tolerate things well. That's the concept in integrative medicine of our toxin bucket overflowing. Finally, we have something that breaks the camel's back. You've had all these exposures over your lifetime, and then you come down with a sickness, and now you have these chronic autoimmune symptoms. Fragrance is one of those few inputs you can completely control, and removing it costs you nothing. In fact, it's probably going to save you some money. Number 3, I would never put bleach on mold. In fact, I don't clean with bleach at all. This is the one regular people argue with me about. Somebody finds mold in a bathroom or a windowsill or a closet after a slow leak. They spray bleach, wipe it down, and the surface looks normal again. The problem is declared handled. Here's what really happened. Bleach doesn't solve a water-damaged building. 2 things that are causing the problem, the moisture and the microbial growth in the material, are still there when the surface looks clean. You change the color of the problem. The other big issue with spraying bleach on mold, and this is the reason why I feel so strongly about it, is whenever you put bleach on mold, it triggers a defense mechanism, and this mold realizes, hey, I'm dying. I've got to do something to propagate my existence. And it lets off spores, and then you inhale those spores. That's your mycotoxin load. The act of spraying can aerosolize spores, so something that was sitting relatively stable on a surface is now airborne in a room that you're standing in. You did not remove the exposure, you redistributed it into the air you breathe. Then people spend the next 2 years trying to figure out why they feel worse in their own house, and nobody connects it, because in their mind, that was solved a long time ago. A water-damaged building needs a real remediation to find the source, fix it, and properly deal with the material that was affected by the growth. This is a contractor conversation, sometimes a testing conversation. It's not a spray bottle conversation. We'll come back to mold later because it connects to number 6 in a way that you might not expect. Number 4, I would never drink unfiltered water, and I would never make an ultra-processed food loaded with dyes and additives a regular part of my week. One soda is not a catastrophe. That's not the argument. The argument is cumulative. Water quality and total additive load matter to 3 things specifically: your capacity to detoxify, which is a real set of biochemical pathways and not a marketing word, the integrity of your gut lining, and hormone signaling. Every one of those responds to what happens most days for years, not to any individual meal. So the useful question is not really whether a given food is bad for you. That framing traps you in an argument you can't win. The useful question is, what is in the rotation? What is in the water you drink every day without thinking about it? Because that is the highest frequency input in most of your life. And what is in the food that shows up 4 nights a week? Because that is what your body is built out of. Filter your water, move the daily rotation towards food that has something in it. We want nutrient-dense food. Number 5, the one I told you about at the start. I would never reach for aromatase inhibitors, conjugated equine estrogens, synthetic progestins, statins, or levothyroxine as an automatic first line. To be clear, I'm not saying those medications are inherently bad. I'm not telling you to stop taking them. Every one of those can be the right call in a well-selected patient. What I'm pushing back on is the default. When any of those becomes the reflex answer to a whole category of complaints, so a lab value shows up and the prescription almost follows automatically, 4 things reliably get skipped. The root cause driver. Nobody asks what is producing this pattern in this person. Physiologic hormone metabolism, how this person is actually processing the hormone, what's it converting into, endothelial health, the health of the lining of your blood vessels, which I'll come back to in a minute, and the difference between a normal lab and an optimal one, because the result inside the reference range ends the conversation. The drug is not necessarily the problem. Arriving at the drug before the question is. Let me give you an example of where the cost is measurable. Aromatase inhibitors in men on testosterone. The idea is that estrogen is the enemy, so you block the conversion of testosterone into estradiol, and you get all the benefit with none of the downside. That's not true. Here's what is actually happening. A large share of what men chase on testosterone therapy is mediated by that estradiol: libido, erections, body composition, bone health, and especially vascular health. So when somebody blocks that estradiol conversion aggressively and drives the estradiol too low, the symptoms they came in to fix start reappearing. They start getting brain fog, ED, and then they wonder what happened. The usual interpretation is that they need more testosterone when the problem is what was done to their estrogen. There's a vascular cost too, and this is probably the biggest one for me. It gets almost no airtime. There was a study in 2003. They gave an astrazole to young, healthy men, which lowered estradiol, and they measured flow-mediated dilation in the brachial artery. This is a measure of how well the lining of your blood vessels responds, and it's one of the earlier signs of vascular health. It went from 6.1, which we considered almost optimal, it's very average, normal, down to 3.5%. 3.5% is very much impaired and borderline pathologic. A substantial move in healthy young men from a medication to chase a look. It runs the other direction too. Another study found that higher natural estradiol levels were associated with better flow-mediated dilation in middle-aged men. This is what a default costs. Estrogen is not the enemy in men. Understanding it is the job. Number 6, the bonus, the one that's not a medication and hopefully not in your house. I would not spray glyphosate. Where I reasonably can, I avoid foods carrying the high glyphosate residue as well. Glyphosate and its metabolite have been detected in the majority of pregnant women. Not a small subset, the majority. That is the finding that moved me because it tells you that this is not limited to people that work with it. In observational work, higher exposures have been associated with shifts in pregnancy hormones, including lower estradiol, estriol, reduced fetal growth, the signals for preterm birth in more recent cohorts. So there's also work showing it disrupts the gut microbiome, and the mechanistic reviews support endocrine disrupting characteristics. But that's not all. There are many studies demonstrating other harm to the brain, the cardiovascular system, the liver, the gut, and carcinogenic effects, or the likelihood to develop cancer. The good news is it doesn't cost you much to avoid glyphosate. You can filter your water. You can choose lower residue where it's easy. Don't personally spray it on your own yard or around your house or where children play. The downside of being wrong is that you drank cleaner water for no reason. I'll take that trade-off. Here's why the 6 belong on this list: light, fragrance, mold, water and food, and then one item about prescriptions. 5 of the 6 of these are environmental. I didn't build it that way on purpose. That's just where I ended up after enough appointments looking at hormones and cardiac risk and integrative medicine. The reason is the total load. A high inflammatory or toxic burden can impair receptor sensitivity and impair hormone conversion, but that's not limited to your hormones. It affects any body system, and that's dictated by your genetic predispositions about which body system it's going to affect. So you can put exactly the right hormone into a system, and you can get a fraction of what you expected because the terrain it landed on cannot use it well. This is why environmental and hormone conversations belong in the same appointment. The house someone lives in is upstream of the labs I'm looking at, which also means that mold is not just a building problem, it's a hormone problem and a fatigue problem, and sometimes an immune problem. Same for fragrance, same for water. Get your morning sunlight, cut out the evening light, use blue light blocking glasses, drop synthetic fragrance, never put bleach on mold, fix your water, filter it. RO is fine. You don't have to spend money on the distiller and remineralization. Don't let any medication become an automatic answer before the questions get asked, including the ones aimed at estrogen. Avoid glyphosate where it's cheap and easy. I don't know your labs, or your history, or your house, or your life. So you treat this as general information rather than a plan for you. Every one of these looks small in isolation, and that's what makes them easy to miss. Over years, they compound for the worst. The compounding is the whole story. If estrogen piece is what you want more on, that is one I have the strongest opinions about and the most evidence for, and that deserves its own conversation.